Please choose your experience.
Freeze!
Ah, dang it. I knew I should have picked the beach simulation. Hello everyone. So I just wanted to have some fun with the intro there. Yes, this is a Virtue Boy for those of you who know from the good old early Nintendo days. It's actually my wife's, so thank you to her for letting me borrow this for the skit. But so again, I find myself here doing a video kind of based on things that are happening out in the world. If you got to see my Twilight Zone episode, that was kind of inspired by what was happening back in March. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. But with all the things that are happening right now, like I stated in that video, and I'll probably state many more times in the life of this show, I love pop culture not just because of the entertainment value. I feel like there's a lot of great lessons to be learned throughout pop culture and a lot of great stories. And if you pay attention, you can actually learn some lifelong lessons. So with everything that's happened, one movie that came to mind, which probably fell under the radar for those of you who were even growing up around the same time I was, but actually 25 years ago this year, 1995, there was a movie came out called Strange Days. A friend of mine, when I asked if he had seen it, he said, he usually sees it on lists for like cyberpunk style movies, which I can definitely see that. So basically this movie, it's an old Fox movie. So I guess technically Disney owns it now, but I promise you it will not be on Disney Plus anytime soon, or Hulu for that matter. It is very R-rated, and that was one of the things that I found frustrating, is that it's actually hard to find right now. It's not streaming anywhere. The DVDs have been out of print for a while. The Blu-rays, I don't even think they came out in the US, and they're super expensive on Amazon. So it was kind of a shame, because I do want to tell y'all about this movie, but I do want to let you know you're going to have to work hard if you do want to go see it. I would probably say look at little local video stores, or whatever stores still sell any kind of DVDs or Blu-ray secondhand stores that you might come across it. So I am going to talk about the movie so you understand why I think it's highly relevant to everything that's going on right now. But I'm going to warn you about the spoilers. I mean, it's 25 years old, but I don't want to spoil the whole thing for you, because I do want you to enjoy it. There's one running narrative, but there's two major spoilers, I guess you could say. So one of them I have to talk about in order to address why I'm even doing this video, but the other one I'm not going to talk about because I want to leave that for your enjoyment. So in essence, this is a kind of a futuristic murder mystery. So I won't spoil the resolution to the murder mystery. The only thing I'm going to spoil is the catalyst for that story, which, as you'll see when we go along, technically you could argue that it's kind of set up at, towards the beginning of the movie, but you still have to kind of figure it out. And if you haven't figured it out by the end of the movie, they straight up show you what was the catalyst for this whole story. So, but this movie, you know, unfortunately didn't do well when it came out. I don't even think I saw it at the theaters. I was probably 16 or 17 when this came out. So I probably saw it on VHS. Yes, you heard me right, VHS. But there's a lot of big names attached to this movie. It's directed by Kathryn Bigelow, who at the time was still up and coming. And you will know her now as of this year, still the only woman director to win Best Director at the Academy Awards for The Hurt Locker in 2008. And she has a laundry list of other awards. She's a great director, has done a lot of other great movies. And then the story is actually by James Cameron, everybody's favorite Terminator writer. And then you've got such a star-studded cast. Now, to think back 25 years, and all these people, I know them now. I don't know where all of their careers were at this time, but now I definitely know all these people. I mean, you have, in the lead, you have Ralph Fiennes, Voldemort himself. You have Angela Bassett. You have Juliette Lewis, Tom Sizemore, Vincent D'Onofrio, William Fichtner, and Michael Wincott. So, I mean, so many great actors. You would think that that was just a recipe for a great movie, and it is. But unfortunately, it fell under a lot of people's radar. On top of that, you have the music by composer Graham Revell, which I apologize if I said your name incorrectly. But he had just previously done The Crow the year before, which also had Michael Wincott as the protagonist in that one, and he's again a protagonist here because he's just such a great bad guy. And it's funny because there's a lot of similarities to The Crow, and I'll go over that in a minute. But let's get into it. So basically, in this world, there is a new technology that is called a squid, and I'll let Lenny Nero, played by Ralph Fiennes, explain it himself.
Superconducting quantum interference device, SQUID. The receptor rig, when I'm putting on your head, sends a signal to the recorder. We call it being wired, but there's no wire. Tell me what you know.
Just what I've read, that the technology was developed for the feds to replace the body wire, and now it's gone black market.
So we actually start the movie with a group of robbers that are using these devices, and we get to see the robbery from their point of view, which is, it's a pretty intense opening to a movie. And you know, you get to see everything that they experience through the one robber who's actually wearing the device. And of course, at this point in the movie, you haven't been explained yet what in the world is going on. You kind of get it, you know, you get that he's put on some sort of device. But I mean, part of the intensity of the beginning is that you don't know what's going on. You're in the middle of a burglary. And I mean, again, spoilers, the dude wearing the device actually ends up dying. So you get to die from his point of view. So lots of fun. But basically you find out that Lenny is basically almost like a drug pusher, except he doesn't push drugs. He pushes this device. And, you know, his thing is that it's much safer than drugs or anything else, because you're basically just reliving somebody else's memory. And of course, you know, the technology was created with good intentions, but with everything else, you know, people learn how to manipulate it for their own benefit. Kathryn Bigelow, like I said, she does such a great job in this movie of putting out there, letting us know what the world is like, because, you know, it came out in '95, but the world, it actually is taking place in 2 days before New Year's Eve 1999, going into the whole year 2000, which, funny enough, I don't remember in real life when Y2K was discussed, but I don't think it was discussed 5 years prior, because there's no mention of that in this movie at all. But there's a nice scene where Lenny's driving through the streets, and we get a nice exposition, both by listening to the radio with him as he switches the channels, and we see the scenes that are playing out on the street. And There are lots of great things that are put in there for exposition, but there's one in particular that really stuck out to me as I rewatched it this week, and I'm going to share it with you here. I can't share the original clip because it has some music in the background that would probably get copyrighted, but here's how it goes.
Are you excited for the new year? Not really. What's the point? The economy sucks. Gas is over $3 a gallon. 5th grade kids are shooting each other at recess. The whole thing sucks. What the hell are we celebrating?
Now again, this was 1995. The only thing that had happened at this point, and Kathryn Bigelow has stated in my research that the LA riots and the reaction to the Rodney King verdict was definitely one of her inspirations to create this story. But with her comment there about the 5th grade kids shooting each other, Columbine, which happened in 1999, was still a good 4 years away. So it was eerily prophetic in that case. But basically, here's the part where if you kind of put it together, you'll know what the catalyst for this story is. So again, spoiler warning, but so we head into where we have 2 police officers are chasing a woman who we learn later is Iris, and she's actually wearing one of these devices. The officers are played by D'Onofrio and Fitchner, who, I mean, these guys on their own are just such great actors. You would have, if you had been following through history, you would have known D'Onofrio from Full Metal Jacket, and that actually comes into play later in my mind. And Fitchner, I mean, he's just one of those actors that you've seen everywhere. But for some reason, the one that sticks with me the most is his appearance at the beginning of The Dark Knight. Right after that scene, they show some news footage of a well-known rapper in that world who was called Jericho 1, and they're actually reporting on his death. So I'm sure some of y'all have already kind of put this together. But basically, from there, we just kind of follow the characters. Juliette Lewis is Lenny's ex-girlfriend, and of course she's with Michael Wincott, who is I meant to say antagonist earlier, not protagonist. And I swear they are at the club that reminds me of the same club that we saw in The Crow, which again, Michael Wincott was in there. So is there such a thing as 7 Degrees of Michael Wincott? Anyway, but I mean, it makes sense because it's kind of the same style. You got the same rock music playing, which, by the way, apart from Graham's score, there's a lot of great actual songs in this. At least one I found out is sung by Juliette Lewis. You also find out that Tom Sizemore is Lenny's best friend. Lenny used to be a police officer, but apparently he was pushed out, and then now he's doing this. So Tom Sizemore is kind of his connection back to, what's going on in the police force. Angela Bassett is a limo driver who's also one of Lenny's friends, even though she seems to reluctantly be his friend.
You just calmly backstroking along in the big toilet bowl, and somehow you never let it touch you. I mean, between working Vice and your current so-called occupation, you must have seen every kind of perversion. But you just like some Teflon man. You still come out this goofball romantic. And
later, we actually get a really good, just quick flashback of how Angela Bassett's character met Lenny, and it was just so perfect. It's like, again, Kathryn Bigelow did such a great job of like juggling all this exposition, but inserting it in ways to where it made it, still enjoyable. That way, I mean, there's so much stuff to be explained to you in this movie because it's a world that you don't know, and most of it never came to pass in the real world. But there's lots of other, things as we're going through the story. The main point that I realized, when going over this movie again, is that the catalyst to me is what's important to talk about, here in 2020. But the main story, it's a cyberpunk mystery is what it is, basically. Because you have people who are for this technology, you have people who are against. You get to see great examples of both why it's good and why it's bad, which seems to be, you know, a very real world thing when it comes to a lot of, you know, advancements and things that come along. There's always those two sides arguing about it. So one of my favorites in favor of the technology is one of Lenny's friends who works at the club, and you know, he's in a wheelchair, and so Lenny actually gives him a disc of somebody running on the beach. And so it's a nice little moment, you know, kind of one of those shows that Lenny's kind of like, you know, still has a good heart. So just lots of little things in this movie like that. But just to kind of move along, basically on the mystery side of things, the killer keeps leaving Lenny squid recordings for Lenny to kind of follow this breadcrumb trail. And so one last time, I'm going to put it right here, spoilers. But you have to know this spoiler if you want to see my point to this video. Basically, if you hadn't put it together by now, the two police officers were chasing Iris because she was wearing the squid, which in turn recorded the death of the rapper Jericho 1, who had been executed by those two officers because of a random traffic stop. So, you know, that was a pretty powerful moment. I remember when I first saw this movie. But, you know, it's just one of those things. It's like back then, of course, you know, if you research your history, you know, there was the whole Rodney King issue was actually videotaped. So it's one of those, you know, there was no arguing. It was right there on film. And so they took that idea and they put it here. And not only is it on film, but it's being recorded from that person's point of view in their actual memory. So that's where, of course, the sci-fi comes in. But yeah, so that, you know, leads us to the climax, which is on New Year's Eve, where, you know, again, I'm not going to spoil who the true killer is, but let's just say Lenny's dealing with that person. But while Lenny's dealing with that, Mace, who is Angela Bassett's character, she's trying to get the recording of Jericho 1's death to the police commissioner who Lenny has vouched for. And when she's trying to get it to him, the two officers who had previously tried to kill her and Lenny catch up with her in the crowd. You know, they start beating her down, and then of course she fights back, and she actually overtakes them because of her. She actually established early on that she is, you know, trained in hand-to-hand combat because of her job. And you know, once she overtakes them and is expecting to tell everybody else what's going on, of course, the SWAT team surrounds her, and unfortunately, they choose to start beating her. And this is where Angela Bassett gives an amazing performance, because, I mean, you just feel the whole scene is just so amazing and tragic. But the power of this scene comes when the crowd around her just finally realizes what's going on, because of course there's just chaos, you know, because it's almost midnight, and they just swarm to help her. And it's, even as a kid, that image, the way Kathryn Bigelow filmed it was just amazing and tragic and powerful. And so it's just one of those things that, you know, everybody involved in this movie was way ahead of their time in trying to show, you know, when people, you know, are being oppressed, they're gonna fight back, you know. And she showed that there. And of course, I mean, of course, everybody's subdued. There's an amazing scene with the two police officers, again, spoiler, to where, you know, unfortunately, William Fichtner's character, who hasn't really said much in this whole movie, he's kind of just been following D'Onofrio, chooses to execute himself. Commit suicide, I mean. And then, and I can't show it here because I'm sure YouTube would take it down, but there's an amazing scene. And again, this is Vincent D'Onofrio's amazing performance, you know, because he's been a bad guy before. But I will show you this image. If you remember that look that he has as Gomer Pyle in Full Metal Jacket, he's got that same look as he's dragging his dead friend, and he's still not giving up. He's still trying to take out Lenny and Mace. But the officers, which earlier had been beating Angela Bassett, are now, you know, trying to hold him at bay, and of course they end up taking him out. But yeah, again, just such powerful moments in this movie. I highly encourage you, if you're a sci-fi fan, if you know, just looking for something different. I mean, of course you're going to have to kind of forgive it because it's 25 years old. A lot of the things that it predicted in that 99, you know, scene did come true. Some of them didn't, but I didn't find any of that distracting at all. I mean, there's a few things that you kind of have to giggle at, you know, things that they thought would be, you know, the current technology, but such is the thing when you deal with sci-fi that was filmed in the past. But anyway, guys, you know, just wanted to put this out there. Highly encourage you to watch this movie. You know, there's a lot of just, I don't even know how to say it. There's a lot of bad stuff happening out there right now. So please just take care of one another. Take care of yourselves. You know, I mean, we've got to take care of each other. There's nobody else who's going to do it but us. So take care, guys.